and linguistics. Language is a system of conventional spoken, manual or written symbols by means of which human beings as members of a social group and participants in its culture express themselves. The functions of language include communication, the expression of identity, play, imaginative expression and emotional release. YouTube started. This is okay? And let us see some of the characteristics and the definitions of language. Many definitions of language has been proposed. Henry Sweet, an English phonetician and language scholar, stated language is the expression of ideas by means of speech sounds combined into words. Words are combined into sentences. This combination answering to that of ideas into thoughts. The American linguist Bernard Bloch and George L. Trager formulated the following definitions. They said, a language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols by means of which a social group cooperates. Any succinct definition of language makes a number of presuppositions and begs a number of questions. The first, for example, puts excessive weight on thought, and the second uses arbitrary in a specialized though legitimate way. A number of considerations marked in italics below enter into a popular we can notify it in the italic words to identify the understanding of the language by the writing. And in spoken language, this the symbol of certain set consists of noises resulting from movements of certain organs within the throat and the mouth. In signed languages, those symbols may be hand or body movements, gestures or facial expressions. By means of those symbols, people are able to impart information, to express feelings and emotions, to influence the activities of others and to comfort themselves with varying degrees of friendliness or hostility toward person who make use of substantially the same set of symbols. And different systems of communication constitute different languages. The degree of difference needed to establish a different language cannot be stated exactly. No two people speak exactly alike. Hence, one is able to recognize the voice of friends over the telephone and to keep distinct a number of unseen speakers in a radio broadcast. Yet clearly no one would say that they speak different languages, and generally systems of communication are recognized as different languages if they cannot be understood without specific learning by both parties, though the precise limits of mutual intelligibility are hard to draw and belong on a scale rather than or either side of a definite dividing line. Substantially different system of communication that may impede by do not prevent mutual comprehension are called dialects of a language. In order to describe the actual different language patterns of the individuals, the term idiolect, meaning the habits of expression of a single person, has been coined. And typically people acquire a single language initially. Their first language or narrative tongue, the language used by those with whom or by whom they are brought up from infancy, and the second languages are learned to different degrees of competence under various conditions. Complete mastery of two languages is designated as bilingualism. In many cases, such as upbringing by parents using different languages at home, or being raised within a multilingual community, children grow up as bilinguals. In traditionally monolingual cultures, the learning to any extent of a second or other language is an activity superimposed on the prior mastery of one's first language, and is a different process intellectually. Then language, as described above, is a species or specific to human beings. Other members of the animal kingdom have the ability to communicate through vocal noises or by other means, but the most important signal feature characterizing human language, that is every individual language, against every known mode of animal communication, and is its infinite productivity and creativity. Human beings are unrestricted in what they can communicate. No area of experience is accepted as necessarily incommunicable, though it may be necessary to adapt one's language in order to cope with new discoveries or new models of thought. Animal communication systems are, by contrast, very tightly circumscribed in what may be communicated. Indeed, displayed reference the ability to communicate about things outside immediate temporal and spatial contiguity, which is fundamental to speech. It is found elsewhere only in the so-called language of bees. The bees are able, by carrying out various conventionalized movement in or near the hive, to indicate to others the location and strength of food sources. But the food sources are the only known theme of this communication system. Surprisingly, however, the system nearest to human language in function belongs to a species remote from humanity in the animal kingdom. On the other hand, the animal performance superficially most like human speech, the mimicry of parrots and of some other birds have been kept in the company of humans, is wholly derivative and serves no independent communicative function. Humankind's nearest relatives among the primates, though possessing a vocal physiology similar to that of humans, have not developed anything like a spoken language. And it attempts to teach sign language to chimpanzees and other apes through imitation have achieved limited success, though the interpretation of the significance of ape signing ability remains controversial. And in most accounts, the primary purpose of language is to facilitate a communication in the sense of transmission of information from one person to another. YouTube correct. However, the socio-linguistic and psycholinguistic studies have been attention to a range of other functions of language. Among these is the use of language to express a national or local identity. Also important are the ludic function of language encountered in such phenomena as puns, riddles and crossword puzzles, and the range of functions seen in imaginative or symbolic context, such as poetry, drama, and religious expression. And language interacts with every aspect of human life in society, and it can be understood only if it is considered in relation to society. This article attempts to survey language in this light and to consider its various functions and the purpose it has been made to serve. Because each language is both a working system of communication in the period and in the community wherein it is used, and also the product of its history and the source of its future development. Any account of language must consider it from both these points of view. And the science of language is known as linguistics. It includes what are generally distinguished as descriptive linguistics and historical linguistics. Linguistics is now a highly technical subject. It embraces both descriptively and historically such major divisions as phonetics, grammar, semantics, and pragmatics, dealing with detail with these various aspects of language. Linguistics, the scientific study of language. The word was first used in the middle of 19th century to emphasize the difference between a newer approach to the study of language that was then developing and the more traditional approach of philology. The differences were or largely matters of attitude, emphasis, and purpose. The philologist is concerned primarily with the historical development of languages as it is manifest in written texts and in the context of the associated literature and culture. The linguist, though he may be interested in writing texts and in the development of languages through time, tends to give priority to spoken languages and to the problems of analyzing them as they operate at a given point in time. The field of linguistics may be divided in terms of three dichotomies: synchronic versus diachronic versus and theoretical versus applied, and linguistics versus macro linguistics. Once again, the three terms of dichotomies are synchronic versus diachronic, theoretical versus applied, and micro linguistics versus macro linguistics. A synchronic description of the language describes the language as it is at a given time. A diachronic description is concerned with the historical development of the language and the structural changes that have taken place in it. The goal of theoretical linguistics is the construction of a general theory of the structure of language or of a general theoretical framework for the description of languages. The aim of applied linguistics is the application of the findings and techniques of the scientific study of language to practical tasks, especially to the elaboration of improved methods of language teaching. The terms microlinguistics and macrolinguistics are not yet well established, and they are in fact used here purely for convenience. The former refers to a narrower and the later to a much broader view of the scope of linguistics. According to the microlinguistic view, languages should be analyzed for their own sake and without reference to their social function, to the manner in which they are acquired by children to the psychological mechanisms that underlie the production and reception of speech, to the library and the aesthetic or communicative functions of language, and so on. In contrast, macrolinguistics embraces all these aspects of language. Various areas within macrolinguistics have been given terminological recognition, psycholinguistics, sociolinguistics, anthropological linguistics, dialectology, mathematical and computational linguistics, and stylistics. Macrolinguistics should not be identified with applied linguistics. The application of linguistics method and concepts to language teaching may well involve other disciplines in a way that microlinguistics does not. But there is, in principle, a theoretical aspect to every part of macrolinguistics, no less than to microlinguistics. In addition to these subfields, there are a number of other subfields that cross-cut them. The first one is historical linguistics. The historical linguistics is the study of how languages change over time, addressing such questions as why modern English is different from Old English and Middle English, or what it means to say that English and German are more closely related to each other than English and French. Next, the sociolinguistics, the study of how language is used in society, and it addressing such questions as what makes some dialects more prestigious than others, where slang comes from and why it arises, or what happens when two languages come together in bilingual communities. That is the sociolinguistics. And the next one is the psycholinguistics, the study of how language is processed in the mind, addressing such questions as how we can hear a string of language noises and make sense of them, and how children can learn to speak and understand the language of their environment as quickly and effortlessly as they do, or how people with pathological language problems differ from people who have normal language. That is the psycholinguistics. Next, the neurolinguistics. The neurolinguistics, that is the study of actual encoding of language in the brain. Addressing such questions are which parts of the brain different aspects of language are stored in, how language is actually stored, what goes on physically in the brain when language is processed, or how the brain compensates when certain areas are damaged. So these are all the neurolinguistics. And let us see the computational linguistics. Learning and understanding a language involves computing the properties of that language that are described in its phonology, syntax and semantics. The challenge of describing this process connects linguistics with the computational issues at a very fundamental level. How could syntactic structures be computed from spoken language? How are semantic relations recognized, and how could these computational skills be acquired? The main goal of linguistics, like the main goal of the linguistics, or like all other intellectual disciplines, is to increase our knowledge and understanding of the world. Since language is universal and fundamental to human interactions, the knowledge attained in linguistics has many practical applications. So, this is our a brief introduction about the language and linguistics. and let us pass on to the second